So if you see, for example, in the release, you've got the release plan, you've got we won't actually release this by December, the website that we were talking about to sell the mobile accessories. The first, perhaps 15th of December is when we would like to have this website out into the market, the beta launch, let's say. And then we will have the item catalog, item list page, item details page, thumbnails of the items that we're going to sell, all of those ready by that time. So we want to have a 3-week sprint, for example, starting from Monday. So every 3 weeks. So essentially, we are talking about roughly 2 to 3 sprints in that time. We've got November and December. So let's say 3 sprints. At the end of the 3 sprints, we're then going to have the actual release going out in December to the market. So we're going to go live with the website. If that was the case, how can we achieve this? What are the kind of activities that we really need to do, right? So that's what we need to understand. So I'll tell you an example, proper example, but just want to give a kind of overview in terms of what these activities are, though, so you can really appreciate the details later. So you've got what we call the product backlog maintenance. We talked about it extensively during the scoping and prioritization course the last week, where we talked about how this product backlog gets groomed, refined, how the items get up from bottom of the pile to the top as they get more and more detailed and more fine-grained. So all of that happens during the product backlog maintenance. And who does the product backlog maintenance? It's the product owner. So product owner does, he or she they own the product backlog in terms of creating it, updating it continuously, refining the items, changing the priorities, giving the Moscow prioritization, the importance versus urgency, and then assigning which of them would actually go to the next sprint or not. All of them would be done by the product owner. So team doesn't come into the product backlog perspective. Perhaps the Scrum Master and the team would actually help support the product owner in maintaining, but then it's the responsibility and the ownership of the product owner. So all of that gets done. The refining, the grooming, everything gets done, and then they write the backlog item. That's why again called as backlog items, right? It's the official term of Scrum. It's not user stories. User story is a technique adopted by Scrum. So you can actually have, as I mentioned, you can create tasks, you can write acceptance test cases, you can write technical tasks, you can have your own defect management methodology like bug tracking, Bugzilla, and the Jira type stuff. All of them could get written by the product owner and also the team. And once you write those, and then you actually say that this is a prioritized set, they go into the sprint plan. So they go into the sprint scope. So you say out of the 1,000 items in the backlog, all of the prioritization scoping gets done by the product owner, and then the product owner says, okay, these 12 items are important for us and urgent for us, so these need to go into the next sprint. So they give a potential scope, the 12 items, and then those get estimated by the team. So even before the sprint planning starts or on that day, they take up those 12 items, they do remember the planning poker, they do the planning poker estimation, and then they come up with the user story points for those, and then the story points for the tasks. They come up with some kind of an indicative size for each of those items, and then they would come up with the scope for what goes into the sprint. So let's assume that out of the 12, they will take the first, third, 7th, 12th, and 11th. So 7 items, let's say. 7 items would be going into the sprint plan. So they would say they would drop off and reject the 5 items because it could be the technically feasible, they're not feasible. There could be time constraints that they might not have the resources or the skills to work on those other 5 tasks or that items. So those get dropped from that plan, and they will estimate and commit to delivering 7 items into the sprint. So that's what would be the part of that. And then they work on they accept that, they commit that these are the 7 items we're going to deliver. This is the definition of done. We all accept, and now they start working on the development, the design development, and then testing of those 7 items. And that's what gets done in the sprint, during the sprint. So our sprint is 3 weeks. So we accepted, let's say that we would work on the item list page. We'll work on the item details page. But that is, we're only looking at the items details page in terms of just showing the one image for this sprint. The next sprint, the team would accept that we'll also get to see, show the multiple items. If there are multiple photos for each item, we'll show them. We'll also show the 360-degree view of that, or a video of the item. We'll show that in the next sprint. We'll work on that in the next sprint, right? So for the first sprint that is coming up in the next 2 weeks, we're going to work on the items list page, where we show all the items in a list, or we can show that in the thumbnail view, depending on what preference the users have. And then we can also show the items items detail page. For example, when you click on one item, it will load up the item details and show the title, the description of the item, the image associated, and all that stuff. So that's what we as a team could commit to delivering by the end of this sprint, the first one. So that's what we are going to work on in this sprint. And then as part of that sprint execution, the team would have a daily scrum, as what we call, or also called as stand-up meeting, right? The daily stand-up. We're going to talk about each of these in detail. So the daily stand-up meeting, we're going to discuss what we did yesterday, what we're going to do today, and what are the problems I have. So I'm going to surface those in the scrums meeting. And then at the end of this 2 weeks of sprint, we'll then have a look in terms of what has been done. So we'll showcase, we can actually do a demonstration of that to the product owner, the customers, and we'll say that this is what has been done. There's an item list view that we have finished, and we can show that to you. This is how it looks like, this is how it works, the navigation, everything. So they can come back, they can actually give the feedback at that point of time. And again, that feedback would get into the sprint, into the product backlog. And the sprint retrospective is similar to sprint reviews, though we are talking about the process. It's not the product or the features that we're developing, but we are going to look at understanding how we work together as a team. If it needs any kind of improvement, how is the communication? Are we doing well? Are we talking enough? Do we have to change the way things are being performed in terms of the process? So that's what is the sort of items that are discussed in sprint retrospective. And this continues. This whole thing goes in a loop again and again and again in the next sprint. So we're iterative. We're actually iterating, right? And that's how it gets done. And the next sprint goes on and on.